Hello, everyone, and welcome. You're listening to the 888 Align podcast. I'm your host, Jessica Hanna. I'm a serial entrepreneur who likes to immerse into many facets of life, focusing on growth, mindset, healing, and soul alignment. 8 represents strength, prosperity, balance, power, overcoming, stability, and to me, the yin and yang of life. Pain weaves the gratitude for the beauty in life and appreciation for our generational evolution. You're in the right place if you're looking to dive deeper into finding meaning within yourself and your life experiences, work towards transforming into and aligning with your highest version of yourself, take action steps towards building and creating the life of your dreams, as well as explore discussions on health and wellness, balance, self-care, plus areas like travel, fashion, art, culture, manifestation, entrepreneurship, and even a little spirituality. To be 888 aligned means to be aligning to your strongest and most powerful and enlightened version of yourself. To continue to evolve and always be open to growth while staying true to your core values and individuality. Let's get started with this week's alignment. Hello and welcome back to 888 Aligned. Thank you for listening in. I really appreciate you taking the time to tune in as always. I hope you all are doing well as we approach the holiday season. It definitely can be stressful or difficult for some at times, and for others the best time of the year. And I think it's important to remember to not compare your situation to anyone else's around you. As goes with anything in life, pay attention to you and your life. And if you aren't liking the way things are going for you, I truly implore you to work to improve it, because you should want what is best for you. So I was getting into a conversation with my partner about the energy of money and how it shows up in people's lives around us and impacts how they perceive and enjoy their own life. And it's really interesting. And we were just talking about this today. So I really wanted to bring this up today because it completely ties into what I'm going to dive into in today's episode. So we can compare the different circumstances amongst our families and friends and networking connections and really see a very wildly different perception in life and how their different lifestyles pan out. And one of the biggest things we noticed was the difference in certain tiers and statuses of wealth and how they behave and think. And some people who have a net worth of, let's say, a couple million may tend to be constantly in this state of frugality and lack and scarcity mindset. Maybe their accounts dip under a certain number that to them defines being safe in their wealth, and they start panicking or they don't feel right. And while that same mindset is shown in people who are in this lower middle class and from a financial standpoint have incredibly less and will feel this exact same mindset, right? And then on the flip side, we see people who have and are making multi-millions and constantly staying in this state of abundance and continue to grow. And they may barely look at their bank accounts, and they may just enjoy life's splendors and use money as their tool for access. While that same mindset is shown in people also in this lower middle class who have had less financially and also only use money as their tool. And if you've ever heard of someone saying that it always shows up right when they need it, they aren't obsessing over anything. They're just enjoying life and using money as a resource when it's needed. And I came to this conclusion today that it's not about the wealth level and how much money you're making that proves your abundance. And while I knew this from my own practices and studies and just reading a lot of books and listening to a lot of other thought leaders in this area, it becomes really hard to grasp onto when you're dealing with money in the real world as an adult with financial responsibilities and growing a business from scratch or just learning how to get on your own 2 feet, especially when you're coming from a certain type of foundation. And the lack mindset really obviously stems from your internal programming of how you grew up. I've seen people around me with trust funds that complain about their inability to access things in life. And I've seen people around me with barely $1 to their name also complaining about their inability to access things in life. It doesn't matter how much money you actually have. And frankly, it's so important to break that programming because we are taught from a very early age that money equals success, success equals safety, and safety equals happiness. So without money, we are not happy. Well, what if we broke that equation? What if money had nothing to do with your abundance or your scarcity, mindset, and lifestyle, even though you were trained to think they are supposed to go hand in hand. What if you decided that they had nothing to do with each other? Because from what I said earlier, technically, as proven through these different socioeconomic circumstances, the level of money really had nothing to do with these different people's abundance or scarcity mindset. Their scarcity or abundance mindset actually came from their own deep-rooted internal subconscious programming. And that's based on how you grew up. As I always reference in my previous episodes, based on your family, friends, community, school, and network of people around you. So for the purposes of this episode, or at least the beginning of it, let's pretend that money did not even exist. And with that, let's get into today's episode. So if we pretend money doesn't exist, then we can still see that there are these types of mindsets that still do exist as foundations for the way we go about and perceive our life situations. And for the purposes of keeping it simple, let's say that there were two categories people can fall into: abundance and scarcity. Now, of course, there are many others, and they can branch off from these two main ones, and every situation and every person's life is going to be different, with either a slightly small tweak or a massive jump in a different lifestyle. But keeping it simple, abundance and scarcity are two very powerful foundational mindsets and energies that can really easily run our entire lives and the generations that come after us as well. And I want you to think about your mindset and think, which one do you fall into? So let's do a quick exercise to help you figure that out. So I'm going to read off what scarcity and abundance mindsets might sound like in your head, or what you might say out loud. So, scarcity mindset might sound like this. You might say, those people are so lucky, it's not fair. Or, that is too much, I can't afford it. I'll never be able to afford this. That's crazy that someone would waste their time and money on that. No one loves me. Everyone is in my way and makes my life harder. I hate waiting. I'm very impatient. This isn't fair. There's never enough. Life is so hard. It never gets better for me. Why bother trying? There's no point. Okay, so those are pretty deep. And if you notice that you ever say any of those or think any of those, even unconsciously, or if it kind of sounds familiar, just write those down. An abundance mindset might sound like this. I know I can accomplish that. Things will come in just at the right time, and I'm not worried about it. I'm excited for what may show up today. I love myself. I trust this will get better. There's enough for everyone. This will be easy. There's no rush. Life is filled with endless opportunities. I know that if I try, I will get there. So if this sounds like you also, I would write those down, or write anything down that sounds similar. Whichever one sounded more like the thoughts in your head is the mindset you more likely lean towards. And if it's scarcity, don't feel like it's the end of the world. This is something that can absolutely be changed. But first, I want you to think about your parents, grandparents, and or other family members or guardians or other people around you that you spent a lot of time around when you were growing up. Think about which mindset they fall into. Were there certain phrases or responses they would have when it came to something they didn't have at their fingertips, or when certain situations or circumstances would arise that maybe cause some challenges? I want you to take some time to write those phrases down that you've heard likely all of your life. And it might take some time to think about these because maybe you just hear them a lot and you're not really very aware to them, or you're just used to them. So really take some time to think about it, and you might even take some time to rehear them from the people around you and then be more aware to them and jot them down. Put them in the notes in your phone, make a list. And this can be positive or negative, and both are important. If it's positive, still write it down. If it's negative, write it down. But I want you to just take note, because these are the things that are being said around you often. This may take some time to really think about. So when you're thinking about it, I want you to picture when really difficult times happened in life. How would these important people in your life respond? What would they typically say? Then write that down. When really amazing things happened in your life, what would they also typically say? Write that down. And sometimes when amazing things happened, there was still maybe a scarcity or lack mindset being said. So write those down because that's incredibly important too. And then after you spend some time on that, and you can even think, and you can even make a list of different people that were and are important figures in your life and certain phrases they would say. After you finish all that, I want you to take a break and take a step back from that list. Then I want you to come back and relook at it from a place of an observer with neutrality. So pretend you're looking at someone else's list and pretend you don't know any of these people. And then just look at what they tend to say in the positive situations or the negative situations. What do you perceive? And if you are having trouble detaching, I do have a short exercise and meditation in episode 2 called Life's Invisible Options on detaching and neutrality to get yourself into that space. So go check that out. And so when you look at these phrases and responses to life situations, I want you to also ask yourself, did they come from a place of jealousy, annoyance, or anger? Or did they come from a place of curiosity, intrigue, and excitement? Because these are two very vastly different energies on the opposite sides of the spectrum of each other, and they can really alter how you respond to life in general as well. Then I want you to really think about how this impacts your own programming in your mind. Do you say any of these phrases or have any of these specific mindsets about certain situations or scenarios, or maybe you just say it in your head? I want you to really think about this, but do this without judgment. Because when we are judging ourselves or even others, we have a really hard time seeing the bigger picture and growing and learning from the situation. Another topic I spoke about in last week's episode with shadow work. So we do need to perceive from a place of neutrality in a way that avoids judgment and allows us to see things from a grander bird's eye view. So whether that be with ourselves or the people around us in order to really evolve and heal. So when you are coming from a place of scarcity, and therefore putting out this energy that you won't have the thing you wish you could have or creating resistance around you, you're sending signals and energy to continue that cycle. That frequency is a resistance frequency. So now when we bring back money into the equation, if we are so negative around money, we will resist money. Think of money as like a animated cartoon or whatever it is that makes money less aggressive or harsh to you. Maybe even draw a picture of money on your list that you've made in a less serious way, like as if you were drawing a cartoon version of money in a children's book. So animate that version. Maybe add some eyes and a smiley face to it and some arms and legs. What if you were to attach like even a personality to money? And I know this sounds a little funny, just stick with me here. So let's say that money didn't want to come around you when you were not fun to be around. So when you're too needy toward money, it doesn't like that clingy energy, so it comes around less. And the same goes for when you're clinging too hard to the money and not letting it ever go, so it doesn't want to be around you any more than it is. And when you're aggressive and angry at money, it doesn't want to come around you because it doesn't make it fun for money. And when you're sad about money, it doesn't enjoy that because it just wants to be around those who are having all the fun. See, as silly as this may sound, think about how this plays a role in what I mentioned earlier with certain characteristics of people with wealth and without, and those that are in a scarcity mindset. When they are wealthy, but they freak out at just a drop of their bank account under a certain number and can't achieve reaching magnitudes higher than that and not even thinking about or worrying about it, it's because they are so clingy to the money that they have that they can't even focus on bringing in more abundance through other ways. And when people are in the lower class and in a scarcity mindset, they're repelling money because they tend to feel angry, stress, and frustration around money. So they're focusing so hard on getting every dollar and working extra hard to achieve that dollar and maybe working for less of their value and never feeling satisfied or happy within their lifestyle, just so they can get that dollar. And they're so hyper-focused on this situation rather than taking a step back and maybe working smarter and not as hard, that they can't find happiness and true purpose, which when aligned in their right way in life, they wouldn't have to worry about money because it would come to them when they enter into a place of purposefulness and fulfillment in a place where they're actually working, less hard, but more smart and also enjoying it. So maybe their productivity is higher and they're more creative and innovative and, can connect better with people. There's all of these reoccurring themes here. So the same goes for when you switch this to abundance. Those that are wealthy and have abundance mindset always seem to keep just growing in their wealth, even while enjoying life in the grandest of ways. And I'm sure you've seen this somehow, whether it be on social media or on a TV show. It doesn't matter how it's displayed. It's just the fact that it exists somehow. And those who tend to have less technical financial wealth can still be abundant and happy and satisfied within their lifestyle and not need more than what they have. They always somehow have money just when it's needed and feel happy with the simplest of pleasures in life. And I'm sure that you've at some point either witnessed this or seen it or heard about it. And if not, I'll tell you there are plenty of people that I have been around that exist this way as well. And this is all a mindset. So now we are going to shift into how we can change our mindset in all things, not just around money. It doesn't have to be about money, scarcity, or abundance. This is really about how we acknowledge how our life is going and how we want to shift it. So here's the mindset shift. When we are struggling with something in life and we create a loop in our lives and we build neural pathways that strengthen as we repeat these cycles, we become addicted to the same outcome. Okay, so when I'm saying a loop and neural pathways, this is what our brain creates for us to continue because it is what becomes familiar. So the neurons fire and they go into a certain neural pathway and they build and strengthen like a muscle. And these addictions to these neural pathways prevent us from moving forward with what we want in life if they have this outcome that holds us back or we think our subconscious thinks is protecting us. But it's really just a certain neural pathway that became familiar, the same way building a muscle would just continue to grow, right? So these addictions prevent us from moving forward with what we want because we have given our subconscious control to take over on autopilot for us. And when we do this, we continue to allow the mind to strengthen its cycles and pathways and allow it to keep running like a powerful engine. And the only way to break this is for something to be more powerful than the subconscious autopilot, which means our conscious mind has to take over. So in order to get out of these bad funks and cycles, we first have to recognize the patterns which are repeating constantly that are no good for us. Then we have to acknowledge we don't want them to continue. And then we have to work to make steps to get ourselves out of it. It doesn't matter how small, just as long as there is progress. So let's break it down a little bit more simple. If you think of these neural pathways as very strong roadways, right? Going from one end to another in your brain, and think of your thoughts as the cars on those roadways. So your thoughts in these cars usually lead to specific destinations and outcomes. So then you can think about how if you want your thoughts to lead to different destinations, you have to build new roads, aka new neural pathways. So how do we build new neural pathways? Well, there are a number of ways to do this. It starts with cracking open the belief systems and thoughts that are riding in those cars onto their destinations on those old roads. So where and how did the thoughts get their fuel and gas from, right? So this is the part of the shadow work we discussed in last week's episode. And if you missed it, go check it out so you can dive a little deeper into the shadow work part. But diving into the deep history of where your thoughts and perceptions originated from equals the fuel for them to move. So that's kind of also what we did even earlier in this episode with making that list of phrases that we hear often, right? Because these are things that are deeply within our subconscious that have been surrounding us for our whole life. Then analyzing how often these thoughts go on these roads in your brain. So that means really paying attention to how often and how many times you cycle through these thoughts that lead you down these roads to the same destination where it is. Whether it be daily, weekly, monthly, or even yearly, whatever it is, write this down and get it in front of you. That will really help you visualize this. And that might take some time because maybe you have to be conscious of when they come up. And every time they do, I want you to write it down. So if you're not sure, like if you can't really say, oh, I don't really know how often this actually comes up for me, take the time then to actually pay attention and be very aware to it in your brain of how often you're going through these, and actually write this down so you can look over it. Then you want to come up with a desired change for each of these thoughts. So for example, instead of saying to myself, I really don't feel happy in my job, my life is boring, I don't get to do exciting things, I never get to treat myself, I don't feel happy with how I look, I want you to negate those phrases. So after you write these all down, with these are typical thoughts maybe you may have, let's say, I want you to, on the other side, negate each phrase with what you would rather be saying in an ideal scenario from your experience. Like, I love my job. I never feel bored with everything I have going on, and I'm so excited for all the fun events I have planned this month with my friends. I can't wait to get home and treat myself to a spa night, and I'm going to take better care of myself and my body so I can feel good inside and out. Right? That would be maybe the ideal, like, opposite of those other phrases that I said before. Now, how can you get into those different emotions and outcomes? Well, I'll tell you that it's a completely different road that you have to build than the ones you've been driving on with your thoughts and actions. Sometimes if our roads, aka again, our neural pathways, are incredibly strong because we've been down them so many times, we have to bring in or exercise different tools or help. So maybe it's speaking about it in therapy first, or learning how to do EFT, which is emotional freedom technique, and also about learning how to rewire and control your thoughts and so much more. Whatever tool you use and whatever maybe professional help you get, you want to seek out the help and the tools when these roads and pathways feel impossible to break for you. And they aren't impossible to break, but maybe sometimes we need a little extra help and they're just a little extra strong. So that's totally okay. I can go into EFT in another episode, and I would love to. It's been incredibly beneficial in my life. It's definitely helped me with the certain thought patterns that when I finally broke them, I noticed my brain started rerouting to different thoughts on its own in a more beneficial and positive way for myself. So that is definitely something I will get into in a different episode. But to continue, I want you to start taking action and being more conscious of yourself and making a small steps list of actions and goals to change your outcome. So when you look at your phrases and thoughts on the one end that you want to change, and then write down the desired phrase and thought on the other end and outcome that you want it to become, then for each one, I want you to make a list of small steps to get to that desired outcome. So let's go back to one of the examples. Something simple for the changeover from I never treat myself to I can't wait to go home and treat myself to a spa night. What does that actually look like if you were to change it? That might mean you make a small list of things you can do to pamper yourself. Maybe it's a bath or grabbing a face mask and putting on some soft music and laying back and relaxing. Maybe it's meditating, putting on some candles, lighting an incense, reading a book. It doesn't matter what it is. Maybe watching your favorite movie. Like, what does that look like for you that would make you feel good? So make that list of things and then actually take the action steps to make it happen for yourself, because it's easy to write it down and it's easy to say, I'm going to do this, but I want you to actually do it, because a lot of the times, half the time, or probably more than half the time, we don't actually take the action, which is actually going to cause the change for you. And it doesn't matter if it feels silly, but I will tell you that if you tell yourself that these small things won't change anything, then you're already messing up and playing a victim mindset, and it won't change anything for you. So get out of your own head, make some changes. Don't put so much pressure on it either. And certainly don't listen to someone with the same cars, fueled by the same scenarios, taking the same old roads as you, because they will not get you to those new roads. They will not get you to where those new destinations are and those new outcomes you want to experience in life. When we want to build new neural pathways in our brain and perceive life differently, it takes some time. Think about when you're learning a new route, when you're driving somewhere or taking public transit or walking just to get to a new destination. It takes some practice. Maybe you have to look at a GPS or map and some conscious awareness if you want to have it known and memorized. So you have to just keep taking this new route over and over and over to get used to it until you finally memorize it, or it's finally feels seamless and you don't have to look at that GPS anymore or that map. The same goes for when you want to change a new neural pathway in your brain to believe and feel differently about things. And think about again, if you were to ask someone who goes to a different place for the directions to this new destination, and they've never been there and they don't know it, how are they going to give you the directions? So don't go to those same old people and these old thought patterns. They're not going to help you. You need to seek the newness that breaks the old. The same goes for when you want to change a neural pathway in your brain to believe and feel differently about things. This goes with our triggers and traumas as well. A trigger is just a very strong neural pathway tied to a traumatic experience. If you want to improve your triggers and be less triggered, you need to work on changing and healing first the trauma behind it, which is that shadow work, and then changing the neural pathways. And again, if you want to improve your scarcity mindset to abundance, you need to also work on the neural pathways. It all starts with conscious awareness to what roads we are on, then acknowledgement that they exist within us and how often they come up, and then conscious action to work to change them, whether that be with the help of professionals or even by yourself, taking the steps to change things. I know you can absolutely do it, as I have with plenty of things myself and still continue to do every day. We are always evolving and changing if we choose to do so, and it's part of life to keep up-leveling and growing and evolving. We are all capable of changing our programming to anything we want. And I'll leave you with this last quote I recently read. Your mind is an innocent machine going along with whatever inherited programs and software were installed into it. All right, thanks for listening in and getting into that 888 alignment. Stay tuned for next week's episode. I'll chat with you guys next time. Thanks for listening to the 888 Align podcast. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button if you want to follow along and stay up to date when future episodes drop. You can listen in on Spotify, Apple, or anywhere you listen to podcasts. Follow the podcast on social at 888 Aligned Podcast.